Hello again, Avatar fans. I'm Avatar.4 here with another video. This video, I will be summarizing what I thought of Korra as a whole, like the series as a whole, and get into my favorite books, why they're my favorites, do I consider it better than Avatar, or just comparing them. And that's the main topic of this video. Then, in my coming videos, I'll do more product things since I've been gone a while before this that have come out. And yeah, let's get into Korra as a series. Okay, negatives. I made a lot of lists because a long list of different things because there's a lot to talk about and I didn't want to leave anything out. So, book 2 was really disappointing in my opinion, especially the first half. The second half is pretty good, I think, as a fan. Yet, there are big gripes with it, like, what did Jinora do to save Korra? Why is Jinora doing this in the first place? Because, you know, if you've seen my last video, I do not like Jinora, which is one of my other negatives, but I won't get into that right now. Not to say that I didn't like some things about Book 2. Book 2 definitely had a strong point, which was beginnings, which explained, like, the backstory of the Avatar and how the Avatar began itself, and as a whole, and how they're part spirit, and Rava lives inside them and all that stuff, which explains why their eyes glow in the Avatar state because of her light and all that stuff. That was really cool. But overall, the beginning was really slow. Several plot points were really boring or dropped, kind of like the Civil War, which could have been an awesome story. But whatever, we went from like episode 4 to episode 11, then we saw something about it. I honestly forgot the Civil War was still going on because Unalaq wasn't even there. He was like off doing stuff with Batu or whatever, I don't know. But, and another complaint is, Unalaq, not Batu. Batu's awesome. Unalaq, a terrible villain in my opinion. And by the look of fans, from what I've seen, they feel the same as I do. He had so much more potential. I know Korra had shorter seasons, therefore they couldn't fit in as much stuff. But Unalaq, there was nothing really to his character. He wanted to bring back spirits. Then when they introduced Vatu, everyone kind of considered him the main villain. Unalaq it didn't play out him as a character, and it, since he didn't have that backstory or character kind of growth or development like other villains did, we didn't really get that attached to him, or I didn't, and yeah, he's the main thing I didn't like about Book 2. I just didn't like Unalaq as a whole. Another negative was Nick's treatment of the show, even though it doesn't have to do with the show directly, like what's going on with the story-wise. It still kind of took away from it as a fan, it being pulled online and so forth. But I'm not going to get into a rant, I just wanted to mention that. Jinora, like I said. Jinora, I do not like Jinora. Like I said in the previous videos, I don't want to completely repeat, but she, in my opinion, isn't an airbending master, and she shouldn't be considered as such. She just doesn't, her as a character, she doesn't do anything, and or what she does, it doesn't make sense, or she just like can do anything with a spirit. Like in Book 3, she calls a spirit randomly when she's locked up, and she's like, "Spirits, I need your help," and one appears. I'm like, I know they say she's spiritually connected, but well, whatever. I just don't like Jinora, but that's me personally. I know a lot of people love her and adore her, but it's not me. Another thing, too much technology. I know I've seen this a lot of places. People's considering it too big of a time jump, considering it's only 70 years from the what we saw in Avatar, and people think they jumped a little bit. They got a little bit too happy with adding technology into the world. I understand sometimes some things, like they were explaining how it's like a jazzy 1920s vibe. Obviously they had some stuff, but like radios, maybe the automobiles, but past that I don't think they should have really added on like all the sci-fi stuff later on in the Book 4, and I think they were just doing a different genre, but I love Book 4 as a whole. That's not really a complaint. I just was just saying. That's one of the things I've seen a lot. Another thing. Let's see. Is that it? Oh, lack of explanations. I've also seen, this is a complaint too. A lot of things felt really rushed. Once again, they didn't have as much backstory time, or like they had like an average of 6 or 7 episodes less per season than Avatar did, which they couldn't develop as many plots considering the network wanted them to do something different, which was not have an overarching story. They can be connected, just make it contained in those books, which means they had to either kill off the villains or that book or just send them in jail or something. And some of those things, since they were rushed for time, they weren't able to explain some things like Unlock's power, Janora's spiritual stuff, even though they kind of did, but in a way it's not really an explanation in my opinion, but that's just me. And Amon, how he took people's bending away. The creators have said like he was blocking their chi paths or something, and how Korra could suddenly airbend, even though it wasn't brought up in the show though. That's the thing, and you have to grade it as the show, considering kind of like with Avatar, the main criticism of Avatar was Zuko's mom. Obviously, we have the answer in the comics now, but since it wasn't in the show, when you're rating the show itself, you have to kind of talk about the pros and cons of the show, and sadly it wasn't in the show, so as a show it's a negative. But those are the main complaints of mine, Amon, and Janora, for lack of explanation. But once again, it's not that big of a deal in my opinion. It's just something I would love to see more of. But yeah, now let's get into positives, the happier side of everything. So, well, the main thing, it seemed like Korra's main arc, I'll just start with that. Korra's character growth and arc throughout the 4 books, like I said, they flow beautifully, in my opinion, through, even though they're contained in the season, they're allowed to make it continuous, not just like a standalone random episode like most TV animation nowadays. They kept that like Avatar. It was just in a different format where it was contained in each season. There were like little details that connected them together. Mostly books 3 and 4 were kind of really connected, in my opinion. It was the same story, just with a different villain, in my opinion. But it seemed like her arc was a spiritual one, and I loved that. And I loved how we explored more of the spiritual stuff in Korra, even though it was really different from what we saw in Avatar. I didn't really think that was a bad thing. Like I said, they were trying to do something really different with Korra. They wanted to make it a little bit more adult, more darker, and they wanted to mix things up a little bit. Like I saw in this commentary, I didn't even think of this, but the spirits, like when they're in the spirit world now, like Korra and them, they're not, when they go through the portal, that makes sense because they're transferring their physical body there, but they're not blue like they're not like a blue ghost looking shadow thing like they were in Avatar. But that's fun to me. Once again, they're kind of mixing it up. And spirits, like you have Iroh in the spirit world, you have all the colorful and nice light spirits and dark spirits. All that stuff was just, as a design and animation person, I love the designs, I love the colors, I love all that stuff, and how each of them were so weird and unique. How, like, there was one that looked, it reminds me of a Tootsie Roll for some reason. It's like it was like a floating thing with the spinning things on the side, and they just come up with little things like, hey, let's make a bat spirit, let's make a weird wheel spirit where it was just flipping around. It's just kind of funny how they did that. And another thing, kind of relating to spirits, the whole Rava and Batu thing, the harmonic convergence. Even though I don't like book 2, I like that plot point because it involved them and how they're connected to the Avatar's creation in the first place, and how Rava is like the spirit, technically the Avatar spirit, and the reason the Avatar lives, and like is reincarnated, and why their Avatar state, they're connecting to Rava's power, that stuff, which was really cool. I liked that. Like I said, I liked the beginnings and what they added to the Avatar as a whole. Another thing, they rebuilt the Air Nation, which I loved. Even some people say it contradicts the name of Avatar. I'm like, well, that was kind of a... First off, I don't I can see why people think that, because, you know, The Last Airbender, that's what the franchise is kind of known for, because that's where it started, that's the main point. And even throughout the first 2 books, because book 3 brings back the Air Nation, you see Tenzin, you're like, you still are kind of constantly reminded that they're the last Airbender family, and still there's no like Air Nation technically, it's just them. But then they change all that in book 3, and Zahir gets airbending all the, I don't know how many, not really hundreds. I don't know how many airbenders there are, but still they say they like rebuilt the whole Air Nation. I like that plot point. Considering it's a different show, the Last Airbender title, like, that doesn't really contradict that, because it's a different show, and they have the right to do that. But I honestly thought it was going to happen in Korra. I just didn't think it was going to happen that way, but I'm fine with that. Another thing, how it was darker, how Korra as a series was more, was darker and more adult than Avatar. There was less childish, like, little things, even though Avatar did really edgy things for a kid show sometimes, and it's really easy to like it as an adult. Obviously, teenager seems to be most of their age groups now that enjoy it as much as I do. But Korra, like, they went really dark on some parts, mostly once every season or so. Not really book 2, book 4. I mean, I'll start with book 1. Why not? But book 1, you ended with Amon and Tarlok and the murder-suicide, which caused some contradiction on it, because it was in the Saturday morning slot where all the kids were watching them when it was back on TV, and it was Nickelodeon, and it was funny because I remember watching that, and I was so shocked that they did it. They, like, blew up a boat with them, and it was murder-suicide on a kid show, because that was probably the most... back then, when it was starting, it was still considered that, because when it continued, it kind of drifted away from that specific. But, it was funny, since I was on Nickelodeon, and you just hear a big explosion, they both die, and then it just, I'm like, we'll be right back on Nickelodeon. Then it shows, like, a cartoon and a toy commercial. I'm like, this is not mixed at all, but whatever. It was cool. And also, the main dark thing was, that everyone remembers, is Zahir suffocating the Earth Queen to death, which was amazing how they brought that in there. And it was so graphic. You saw her, like, eyes about to pop out of her skull, it looked like. You saw her eyes bulging, and it was so dark and unexpected. And even though people have been saying, why can't you suck the hair out of people's lungs? Well, you can. And book 4, Kuvira, her motives kind of reminded everyone of, like, the Hitler World War II thing, which I kind of agree with. So it was really serious, even though she didn't really do anything like suffocating the Earth Queen. She was really intense, and she was putting in people into these camps, and she, like, you know, a dictator. Her motives really were kind of dark, how she was just taking over everyone, not caring about other people's feelings, how she was willing to sacrifice Batar, how she blew up those guys and Kuvira's again, but with the machine, just like, and you're like, they're dead. But so there was a lot of dark stuff. It just wasn't directly shown. It was implied mostly with what she's doing and her role as a dictator, kind of like that World War II vibe. And yeah, another thing, like I said before, the villains in Korra were amazing. That's one thing, definitely, without a doubt, I think Korra has better villains than Avatar. Don't get me wrong. My favorite Avatar villain, I don't really consider Zuko a villain overall because of his changing attitude, and really he did what he did because he wanted to restore his honor because he was sent off. I didn't consider him a villain because he wasn't like Azula. He changed, and you could see him constantly going back and forth throughout books 2 and 3 especially. So for most of the series, he wasn't a villain really. So I consider Azula the main villain, just because Ozai was she was out doing things. Ozai was kind of just the big bad, kind of just sitting in the throne room, kind of doing what Azula says when you think about it toward the end. You're like, yes, let's burn down the Earth Kingdom, because Azula said it. And then he just needed to be the big confrontation of Aang, but Azula was the scary one. She's my favorite. I love Azula as a villain. She's awesome. But anyway, as a whole, besides Unalaq, Amon, so creepy and terrifying. I remember I was terrified of him just because of he's masked and his dark, creepy voice and everything. And what I like about all these villains, like Toph brings up in book 4 in the swamp, she's like, all these people had really good motives. They really are good motives and good lessons for everyone, the world, and we can relate to, but they just went too far in their beliefs, which is true. And Unalaq aside, once again, Amon, he wanted equality. Zahir wanted kind of freedom. Well, not freedom. Well, he had a weird way of showing it. He wanted to free people, but he was only willing to hurt the leaders and the Avatar, but he wanted a kind of he was an anarchist, so he wanted chaos, yet freedom, but he just had a weird way of showing that. And then Kuvira, kind of, like we said, she felt like, she said she was an orphan, and she didn't want the same thing what happened to her, being tossed aside by her parents, to happen to her nation when no one else could help it. Obviously, she wasn't just going to stand by and let the Earth Kingdom crumble after the loss of the Queen. So she did something. You actually kind of want to be on their side, all three of those. No, I don't really care about, as much as I love the spirits and how they come back. I don't care. Sorry. The other ones I could relate to, and I felt sorry for them. And I not really felt sorry for Amon, but or the Red Lotus, really, mostly Kuvira, but still, I kind of saw where they were coming from. I kind of wanted to root for them, but I felt bad too. But anyway, they were so in depth, and I wish we would have gotten at least one episode of backstory each season on just the villains. That would have been amazing, especially the Red Lotus, how they met. Well, like, you know, the flashback that we saw of Sokka teaming with Zuko and Tonraq and them taking down them when they first tried to kidnap Korra. I'd love to see that and how they connected. And since there were 4 of them, and my favorite's Minghua, how she lost her arm. I know that'd be kind of dark and serious, but still, just stuff like that would have added so much. But still, I love how they handled all the villains. They did great on that. That's probably my biggest positive on Korra. And the old gang, you got to see old Toph, old Zuko, old Katara, which is my bae. She's my favorite. Love Katara. But, and also old Aang in the flashbacks and that whole episode. You got to see them, Sokka. Even though I'd love more about that, I kind of understood why they were wanting to tell another story. They might get into that in comics. Who knows? But I'm happy with the amount of them that we saw. I just wish they would have teamed up or something and saw them fighting like Katara, because like I said, she's my favorite. Once again, the animation art style, they kept it 2D, which once again, as an art person, I was all for, and all the design and everything. I loved all that in Korra, and all the art books and my future reviews, I'll rave about how awesome they are and how beautiful the paintings are. And I also liked how there wasn't much filler. Like I said, they didn't have the extra episodes per season like Avatar did. Everything was straight to the point. Maybe one filler episode per season. But that's pretty much it. And the score, once again, they released season 1. I loved the music in it. It was awesome. The mixture of jazz, Asian stuff. And to close, kind of, Korra as a whole, I loved it as an experience. Since I got into the Avatar fandom, but after Avatar ended, I didn't get to really experience it as a fan. Considering it's like my favorite show now, I kind of wish I would have gotten back into it then. I could have gotten the toys, when maybe, who knows. But you know, back when the fandom was so active and seeing it for the first time together on TV, the excitement of that, I kind of got to live that with Korra, even though I got put online. I still enjoyed every minute of it, and I'm happy that I was able to experience that since I missed ATLA. And, in my opinion, Korra, yes, it's a worthy follow-up. I think, overall, still my favorite's Avatar, and I think you could argue that mostly, I know a lot of people actually prefer Korra, but Avatar, I think, critically, is a more solid series, but there are positives and negatives to both. Something Korra did really, really well, in my opinion, and some things it didn't. There were low points more than Avatar, which, because of that, I think Avatar's a stronger series as a whole, and in my opinion, better than Korra, but I still think Korra's a worthy follow-up, especially after rewatching them all several times. Book 2 I've seen the least, and even that was better than I thought it was. I think since I wasn't really disappointed because I wasn't seeing it for the first time, I wasn't as hard on it. But yeah, books 3 and book 4 of Korra were my favorites by far. I loved them and loved the villains. Kuvira is probably my favorite villain. Well, the Red Lotus is awesome. I just loved having kind of a negative Team Avatar versus Team Avatar. It was awesome having someone from each elements and each one specific. Zahir, how he came back for book 4, Korra's character arc. Those were the strongest points. Korra's character arc, the villains, books 3 and book 4. If it was just them 2 books, I actually would probably prefer Korra. I wouldn't say it, still wouldn't say it's better than Avatar critically, but my favorite would be them if it wasn't for books 2. And as much as I love book 1 and Maman and all that stuff, there were really a few moments I just didn't click like books 3 and book 4 or Avatar did. But still, that's my Korra series as a review. Continue to leave comments, give me your feedback. What was your favorite books? Did you agree with what I said? Blah blah. Once again, I'll come back for my product reviews fairly soon, and I'll keep on updating it with. And then later, I'll do an Avatar franchise thing where I like go through Avatar, and once again, more in depth of why I think each, the positives and negatives of both, and my top like episodes and everything. But yeah, so I'll be doing a lot more from here on out, since once again I'll be out of school fairly soon, and I'll be able to freely watch Korra all the way through now that it's over. Even though that's kind of sad, it's bittersweet, because now people just watch it all the way through. So, yeah, this has been my Korra series review. Thanks for watching.